as Angela said, I think we have the OGs in the house, our two principal data engineers on Snowflake. I think they were there probably when Snowflake started, building out kind of some of the first Snowflake instances in South Africa, Rolf and Kirsten. And they're going to introduce themselves in a bit, but I'm just going to paint a quick picture of one of the demos and the use cases that we've been tackling. Another clicker. Okay. So I mentioned earlier that my past life, or maybe current life as well, have an actuarial background, and so the way we look at risk and building financial products is always from an asset and liability basis. How do we build up and project assets? And I know there's some actuaries here today. How do we build up assets that ultimately can match someone's liabilities of the point of their life, such that they're constantly in a secure position, that they never have to worry about a cash flow imbalance. Ultimately, that's what the actuarial profession is really there to do, financial security for customers. So we've built an advisor agent, which this can be an agent that aids a credit team, it can be an agent that aids an insurance team, as well as a private banker. So we'll just go through this quickly from a slides perspective, but I wanted to kind of paint a picture. And the point of this final kind of presentation today is customer obsession. So I kind of linked to it a little bit later, but everyone for the last kind of 20 years has been talking about unified data and Customer360 and single customer view. But the question is, what do you actually do with it? If all of your data is in one place, that's great, it's amazing. But what can you now actually do? And given the kind of theme for the day and the thesis of where we've been going, we just want to highlight some kind of research that we've done and some stats. So if you take a look, so at just the experiential landscape in banking, and we'll touch on kind of insurance as well. Consumers desire relevancy. So about 69% of consumers are more likely to purchase from a brand that personalizes the experience. Many of you, or some of you might be, I've had this myself, where I've been banking with the bank for say 20, 25 years. Every single transaction that I've made, they know about. They know where I live. They know where, who my family relations are. They know if I'm married. They know if I have kids. I would have granted my kids, child parent card. If you are not surfacing those personalized, kind of interactions with your clients, it leads to disgruntlement when they start to apply and look for new products. 75% of the world will be governed by these kind of modern data privacy laws. So we're going to speak a lot about data governance, Snowflake Horizon, and how that actually feeds into one of the lines of questions earlier around processing of data, the use of data, rightful processing, PII, and how we deal with that. The main aim here is to not be a business prevention tool. We're here to kind of make sure that we are compliant, that we're making governed decisions, but it doesn't take us 2 years to get there. So, and then the final step, which is quite alarming but very real, is that people are not trusting of personalized chatbots and AI. So a lot of the time this is due to the hallucination problem, it's due to spurious results, it's due to a lot of architectural issues around very slow or models again that don't have context. And again, this is kind of a step in the direction of giving these kind of digitally enabled private banking experiences much richer context. So this is what a current environment might look like. Data silos, system sprawl. I think we've spoken significantly about this today. And I think a lot of what we're about to show is an attempt to say, take 3 business units, your bank, your home loans, for example, your credit, your insurance team, as well as your asset managers and your wealth managers. And how do you now stick all of these systems together, these databases together, in a compliant way, but also that it's user-friendly so that you can actually then go out and build these products. And given this kind of current state that we find ourselves in kind of every enterprise, it's not obviously just Standard Bank, having been around for 160 or 166 years, there's massive system sprawl. So what does this lead to? Disconnected data leading to business pain. It is very painful for us to go to compliance and get approvals every time we want to do something and build a new product. And system sprawl, which I've just spoken about and what we've elaborated on during the day, which leads to AI bottlenecks. So the message is clear: Customer360 is not enough. What do you do with all of your data when it's finally in a platform that can be used? So we're going to showcase to you today Kimberly Flores, who's one of our clients. You can imagine that's in rands. She's a high net worth customer. She has quite a big liquid investments portfolio. She's got quite a balanced kind of risk profile, and we know her annual income because obviously she banks with us. So we see her salary every month and we know what she earns. So we are going to basically demo today stitching together these three kind of data sets around banking, potentially home loans, insurance, and then wealth, and see how we can create one agent that fully understands this customer. So we've effectively then gone and said, okay, well, what does this actually do? It provides unified data in one platform. We've discussed this today. It generates insights to the advisor. So the aim of this is to be an aid to your private bankers, to your advisors. I think the worst thing ever is to have a private banker that is so inundated with requests. Maybe they're looking after a couple hundred clients, and because they don't have time to reach everyone, they don't have time to deeply understand their customer, they'll end up becoming almost like a personal assistants rather than private bankers. And what you want is a high net worth individual, or even ultra high net worth individual. You want a human to speak to. You want someone that understands your needs. You want someone that is skin and flesh, that can actually relate to you. But these people don't have the time to gain all of that context. So I'm going to hand over now, just before we get into the demo, I'm going to hand over to Rolf, who's going to just do a quick intro and tell us a little bit about yourself. Go for it.
Hi everyone, my name is Rolf. Recently joined Pygio to do basically everything, like from start to finish, data pipelining to the analytics, etc. Been working in the IT industry for almost 40 years, doing data for plus minus 25 plus odd years, and I've worked in telcos, I've worked in financial institutions, built large data scale, or worked on large data scale projects. I tend to scream when I'm too close to things. So pretty much have a vast array of knowledge on a lot of industries and how we can apply data within those industries, etc. I think I'm actually quite privileged here today to be associated with all three, all entities. I used to work at Standard Bank back in 2010. I worked in EIW, so I pretty much know your processes, your challenges. We used to work on Teradata in those days. I don't know if you remember this, and the challenges we had around that. So I see nodding heads. So yeah, pretty much. And then obviously working with Snowflake for the last, I think 6 or 7 years. When inside South Africa when they first arrived, like Angelo, fresh off the bus, came and tried to do this pitch to us. Myself and Kirsten, also I've been working with him for the last 16 odd years, so I'm going to be very corny now. I'm going to call us Snow Bros, okay, because that's how long we've been working together. I know it's very corny, at least breaks the ice a little bit, sorry, I had to throw that in. And then also, if you take my partner Kirsten, where we came from, he used to sweep warehouses, now he's sweeping data. Okay, so he'll explain quite a bit about himself after this, but hopefully we bring a wealth of knowledge, both technically and shall we say, in business-wise, okay, to the Pygio suite of tools. So yeah, looking forward to explaining more later.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Customer360. I think Ralph has summed up everything. Basically, I've been working with it for the past 16 years. I've worked everywhere besides Denmark. So 20 years ago, I started my journey basically cleaning warehouse floors. To his point, 20 years later, I find myself studying in the cleaning business. This time it's on data. Been around the block, been in telcos, been in banking, business banking, private banking, logistics, telcos. Now I find myself working in an AI data science company, which is exciting, challenging, but we're here today to put our skills to the test.
Cool. Let's see the demo on Kimberly. Thanks, guys. Oh, we got some Horizon stuff first. Sorry.
I'll take this one.
Go for it.
All right, so most of you have heard about data governance throughout the entire day. So kind of like they've explained how this foundation is built into Snowflake itself, okay, which is exactly what it does. But I think the gentleman over there somewhere had a very good question about customizing that data. Okay, in other words, not just having what Snowflake does underneath the hood to keep governance intact in your organization, but also maybe collecting something like an infosphere and bringing down that data governance into Snowflake itself. So Snowflake has this beautiful little wheel: compliance, security, privacy, interoperability, access, etc. But again, I mean, like, these are just words that you see on a page. You can read exactly what it does. So what we're going to do kind of like practically is I'm going to focus in on the security piece of that little wheel there and show you a couple of insights into how we would do, shall we say, dynamic masking of data, tagging of data, and showing how it applies based upon the roles that you have inside the organization. So one of the questions I know that came out earlier today was, how can you make sure that this data is safe if someone else goes in and tries to have a look at this data? So if you can kind of like show you very, very briefly how this all kind of like fits together. How many of you are technical, in the audience here, like work in SQL and stuff like that? Okay, good, a few of you, that's great, because I'm going to actually show you some of the content. I'm going to bring up some SQL code and explain how it all fits together inside this environment. And once we've done that, remember, we're looking at a model really that's a Customer360 based model. So you have various bits of information around this customer. And once we've got that, as my colleague Dimitri said here, we will then show you what Kimberly looks like on the other end of the scale. So can we switch to the demo quickly? All right, so we're going to explain the concept of dynamic data masking, conditional data masking, and creating tags. Now, let's look at the significance of each three of those in terms of how it actually applies to the data that you've got. I think, Kirsty, if you can for me, can you go to the catalog and let's just show what the client table looks like. Fantastic. All right, great. Okay, so generally, these are the fields that we have. Okay, and you can see, as we have it at the moment, there's no tags applied to it, there's no policies associated. You can actually do a data preview of the data quickly from our side. And bear in mind, all those tools that we've done to actually cleanse this data, as Dimitri has said, it's all come through that whole assembly. Okay, it's cleansed the data looks pretty good, and this is the kind of data that we have. Now, some of it we might have to apply to copy, some of it might be sensitive data, and some of it may be, let's say you want to campaign to a client, but that client has opted out of that. As I think the gentleman said before, you have to specifically say, I'm going to campaign like this, and you have to have consent based on that. So we're going to have to bring in some sort of consent-based policy to say, you know what, this person, no, you cannot campaign to that person. So if we can switch to the code now quickly.
Just maybe to go back there quickly and talk to the data sets themselves. If you look at the data sets that we're looking at, so we've got client data, we've got portfolio data, we've got transactions, and then an advisors table. So this is the kind of showcasing, just stitching together multiple data sources, which I think is going to come in. It's just an important point to note as we progress, because these typically would not be all housed in the same place.
So the uniqueness of Snowflake, and I mean it was built on this premise of sharing data. So I can have data sitting in one business unit, or even outside of Snowflake. It doesn't actually specifically have to be within Snowflake itself. Okay? Anything I create from a policy perspective or a security perspective follows the data. So I can now intersect between different organizations, share that little segment of data to the other part of the organization without contravening any of the security policies that are put in place. So very, very powerful concept, because now what happens is you're actually not having to write pipelines or create pipelines to move this data between the organizational units, and keeping your data separate and private to the organization and the people that have access to that data. But yet, it might need some insights from another organizational unit to be able to be brought into. So that's why we've got that whole model there. We've got advisors, portfolios, and bits and pieces of information. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a dynamic masking policy. And what this does, I'm using the role of an account admin, which means I have all the rights in the world. I can do whatever I want here. Basically what I'm saying is, if my role is an account admin, which I am, okay, then just return me the value, else mask that piece of data. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create it quickly. And remember, these are simplistic policies. Basically what happens is you'll have a data governance committee, and they will subscribe, whether it be a federated view or not, of how you would actually apply certain things or certain policies to your data, to be able to make it secure and to follow that governance, whether it be regulatory or even compliance, etc., etc. So we've done that one. Sorry, that one, and Chris, do the sensitive one as well for me at the same time. You're on both. Okay, great. So if we have a look at our data now, I am the administrator and I can see all my data. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it with a public role which does not have now access to the. Why? Because my policy said if you're an admin, I can see the data. If you're not an admin, this part of the data will be masked. So, based on the fields that I asked to apply the masking policy to, I have email masked, and if we go across, yeah. You go to the catalog for me quickly. So this is when inside, like, shall we say, a notebook we've generated this information. Okay, I'll show the entire data set. Yeah. I just want you to go to what's in for me, Chris, and just show me the data. Now remember, I am the account admin, as you can see at the bottom there. Right, now I'm going to ask Kirsten to change the role. Okay, you can run it, that's fine. So there's many ways to skin a cat, just like going to different environments just to show the capabilities. That's not nice, just the second arrow down. There. Sorry, that's it. There you go. Okay, and you can see our annual income and net worth is 0. Well, it was 0. Because that was the mark. I said, if you are not that role of account admin, You will see now I cannot see the network. Now this applies. So I've applied these policies to the data. It follows. So if I share this data set now with somebody else, and remember it's all role-based access control, means I'm saying you cannot see any of this data if you are somebody else, bar account admin. Okay. So that's on the fly masking of data. And remember, it applies to any of the BI tools that you also have. So in other words, if I've got something like Power BI or Tableau talking to this data, and it wants to see this data, on the fly, if you do not have access to the data based upon the role that you have, that data will not be available to you, it will be masked out. So from there now, what we'll do is we'll have a look at a conditional policy masking. Now this says, in my world, okay, based upon certain attributes inside my data set, I'm going to actually apply them. So it doesn't matter whether I'm account admin. So someone from campaign comes along and says, guess what? I need to campaign to a whole lot of people. Who can I campaign to? So let's run this mask with me quickly. So I've just outputted two columns. One is the phone number, and one is the consent flag inside the data. And you'll see that the data is, or the consent is 0, not allowed. So now you have the ability now to control, okay, from a popular perspective, who you can campaign to, not campaign to. Remember, we talked about products, we can talk about, like specifically if Semantic or sending a certain policy to someone, etc., and these people do not want to hear anything about insurance, for instance. You can set that all up via a policy to say, these are the people you, and therefore not contribute from a public perspective. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to apply tags. So it's pretty much hectic doing one field at a time and putting a policy and all the rest of that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually create a tag, okay? And a tag is then applied to the entire schema of a database. So it's not just a column in particular. So what we'll do is we're going to create a tag called PII_col, and we're going to say it's allowed values on that tag, okay? It's called PI data and non-PI data. It's just that simple. Now once we've done that, I'm going to then modify each one of those columns to give or set the tag on those columns to what it is. So if I'm looking here, I'm looking at last name, address, city, and state. We'll have a tab or a tag of PI data, which means I need to actually do something with those tags. So what am I going to do with it? First, we got with it before we run it. Yep, it's fine. Okay, now we're looking at execute policy. So if you look at the policy that's here, so I'll just show the policy. So the policy is here. I'm going to create a PI data master policy, and it says if my current tag on this table of data that I'm looking at, okay, is PI call, and it has a value of PI data, and my role is in account admin, then show me everything, otherwise master it. So now I have the ability to like control my environment, and in fact, let's say for instance, you might have credit card data, and you want to mask everything but the last 4 characters. You can apply some sort of regex command to it that will filter out the X amount of characters, say the 12 characters or 14 characters, leave the last 4 to be seen. In terms of, and remember, data governance and your communities will generally set those policies. So, Chris, let's run this mask. All right, remember, here's account admin. Okay, we're running it. We can see what the data looks like. Now we're going to run it in a public role. And my data is masked. And even now, Kirsty, let's go to the query language. Yeah, show what the data of the table looks like. So remember, I did it in one environment. This is in another environment. We're looking at the data. We should see all the data here. Look at the data preview. Okay. So just as a UI thing, you can actually see here the tags that are applied to the table, the masking policies are applied, and in fact you can actually, if you wanted to, inside, so Kirsty just going to the tag, so you can add a tag. And these, remember, I've already created these tags. So I can apply these tags within inside any kind of table environment that I actually set up with inside Snowflake. Let's go to the actual data now. Pre-date preview, yeah. And you'll see all the data. Then I want Kirsten to change his role here. Right there, Kirsten, yeah, to public. So this is again working inside the UI itself and showing you what the data looks like. And you can see now all the data is passed. So again, policy driven based upon your data governance and how you cover your data in the environment. And remember, every organization is different. Okay, you have different regulatory requirements, compliance requirements, risk requirements, etc. So this is very much a collaboration. I mean, we're technical, we can apply it, but the collaboration between ourselves and the client to be able to put down these policies succinctly with inside your environment. So that's a very basic overview of the kind of security we can apply through the governance within inside the environment. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Kirst. He's going to show you now Kimberly and how we've applied Kimberly in the environment based upon that 360 model that Dimitri showed you earlier. We've built a semantic layer on that, okay? And we're going to attach that semantic layer to an AI agent and then produce insights based on that 360 view of that client.
Cool, thank you, Ralph. Well, I have to look at the screen because I don't have it in front of my laptop. So basically, in a nutshell, I'm going to create a semantic view that everyone spoke about today. I just want to show you how it works in the back end. I've created a little architectural review of how the data flows from all the way from source into Snowflake. From Snowflake, how we create our semantic view, how we use Cortex AI to attach that to the semantic view, and then we use Snowflake Intelligence to ask it questions. So from this diagram, you can see the data we ingested is all from flat files. We ingested it into Snowflake as structured data. You can also ingest unstructured data, which is basically your PDFs. From there, we conform and transform that data with any cleaning rules on the data set. We then transform that data into a Ralph Kimball methodology, a star schema method, using facts and dimensions. From there, we would then create a semantic view on top of our star schema, which then Snowflake purely from on semantic views, whereas your Cortex search will search via vector search on any unstructured data. Similarly, if I wanted to unpack any unstructured data from a PDF and I only want to extract certain information from my PDF, I will then use Document AI to extract those values, add it to my staging layer, and then add it to as part of my star schema methodology, which then essentially will be part of my semantic view. Just to scroll down. So this is the actual physical data model that Dimitri and Ralph spoke about that we're using for this use case. This just gives you a visual representation of how all these data links together and the relationships it has. I'm now going to move to how I create a agent, and from the agent I'm going to attach my semantic view. So just before I move in there, this is basically how you create a semantic view. Basically, I'm just grouping my underlying data. I'm basically just specifying a business definition because the reason why I want to apply a business definition is because that way my AI agents will interpret and understand the data based on a business definition. So basically all my columns or all my tables, I've applied a business definition to it. I've then grouped it into facts and dimensions. And if I go to my data explorer, you'll see there's my semantic view. Additionally, I've created two user-defined functions. These user-defined functions, the first function basically just calculates the credit life premium. The second function will then create a home loan repayment calculation. and then I will attach that to my AI agent, which will then be able to ask it questions. So now I'm just going to go quickly and to Chris's point earlier on how easy it is to create an AI agent. Click on my agent, which I've already created. I've called it SB Demo. If I click on my AI agent, click on Edit. All I'm just going to do here is go to my tools. In my tools, I am attaching my semantic view that I just created to my Cortex Analyst. Additionally, I'm attaching my two functions that I've created in my database, the home loan repayment calculation as well as the credit life calculation. The agent then basically uses these LLMs, basically the top 5 best LLMs that Snowflake uses. I'm going to default to auto, and I'm going to let Snowflake Intelligence to decide which LLM to use for the best output. So in my access, it's also access-based. I've allowed account admin, which is an ownership. I can also add the public role to this. But if I ask the agent a question around, let's say, physical addresses, it's going to be masked because that public role does not have access to the underlying data in terms of the delivery addresses. I'm now going to open up Snowflake Intelligence.
I just want to highlight that this is so easy to do. He's doing it one-handed.
As you can see in my Snowflake Intelligence, I am referencing the agent that I just created, which is the Client Portfolio Insights. And from there, it will tell me what I'm referencing behind the scenes. So I am referencing my semantic view that I just created. Additionally, it's referencing the two user-defined functions, the home loan repayment as well as the credit life premium. I'm now going to ask the question. Just make it my text.
So, you want to talk to the example?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we'd spoken about Kimberly. Kimberly is a high net worth customer. We've just received a request by Kimberly for a home loan. Kimberly is looking to buy a $5.5 million home, and we've just received this request. Now, I just want to make, while the agent's actually running, and this, it's just going to show you the outputs based on everything we've discussed. But I just want to highlight, going back all the way back to the example of Kimberly. Kimberly's a high net worth individual. She's smart. She's going to shop around. She's going to go to, some other banks and ask for the best rate. And what you have the unique advantage of is that Kimberly has been a customer of yours for the last 20 years. You've got all the insight, all of the data on her. What you do not want to do is give Kimberly a subpar experience. Not just a subpar experience, the financials need to make sense for her, the economics of the home loan need to make sense for her. We need to make sure we're giving her the best rate possible, but such that it's also within the home loans calculator, that defined function that we can pull from the home loans division, we can serve that to her. What you want to do over and above that is obviously now, from a private banking perspective, you want to go and say, right, Kimberly, we know that she's married, we know that she's got children. It's very likely that she needs a credit life policy on top of this as well. You can then go in your Snowflake environment and actually pull from the credit life team a calculation based on Kimberly's information. There might be a need to reach out to gather more info, but for the purpose of the demo, you might already have a rich data set on Kimberly, pull that information and offer her a tag-along credit life product. Where it gets really interesting is for your wealth advisors and your wealth teams to now go and look and say, okay, Kimberly, we know that you are now going to be spending over the next, say, 20 years of your mortgage, you are going to be spending $5.5 million with us. We're going to give you the best rate possible. We're going to give you a credit life policy. But we're also going to try and build an asset portfolio for you that matches this outgoing liability that you will have to us. Such that at the end of the day, you actually, by actually banking with us and by investing with us, you can actually almost to some extent pay for this house through the dividends of your investment, which is quite an actuarial way of thinking about things, trying to match this individual's liabilities with their assets and creating a structured portfolio of an investment portfolio for her that will actually dissect and allocate assets according to her risk profile, which we already know we have this information on her. And if now we look, as a private banker, you want to be armed with all of this information. Some of the stats show that customers are 23% more likely to stick with you for more than 4 years longer than expected if you offer them tailored advice. And this is what we've tried to do here. So we can see that the life event, which is coming from our interactions table, is triggering us as the advisor to reach out to Kimberly and say, Kimberly, we are going to make you this we're obviously going to give you a home loan. You're going to be paying off $44,000 a month. That equates to an annual cost of $530. So your term will be 20 years, and you're getting this at a really, really good rate of 7.5% because you are one of our best customers. Might be an unrealistic number. What we then do is we then go and pull from the calculators, the UDFs, the user-defined functions that we've built in Snowflake. You can actually then go and pull calculations from other teams. This will sit in another team's calculation and surface those insights from that calculator into this response. And now we can say, well, we're going to offer you an additional insurance premium, a life cover. You don't want to leave your family in a bad state should anything happen to you, and now they've got this big liability. And ultimately, your total mortgage is the sum of those two amounts. Okay, you've given this all in the space of a couple of seconds. Now, where it gets really interesting is to go further down, which did not generate. Do you have a previous one? So now what we want to do is get the wealth team involved and show, okay, based on the liability that you have towards us over the next kind of 20 years, we want to structure a portfolio. By the way, we see that 20% of your salary is leaving our account. It's going to a wealth manager external to the group. We want to retain that within the Standard Bank group. So given that we know that insight, there's a little bit of churn risk happening there. You want to stop that churn risk and bring that wealth back to you and say, given that you're highly liquid, given your risk profile, we can actually tailor a portfolio, an investment portfolio based on your allocation. And here the AI has actually gone into one of our portfolios table with all of our assets, and then structured a portfolio allocation that will match your liability. So we're looking for a dividend of $530,000 a year to match the outgoing payments. And so what we can then go to Kimberly and say is, Kimberly, if you invest X amount, we can actually make sure that your assets, or the income from your assets, matches your liability. What you've done is you've created a totally tailored experience using the systems, the calculations, all the assets that are already in the bank to surface all of these insights into one place and give that advisor experience, the wealth manager, a much richer context. So now, even though this advisor might have 500 clients, every single conversation is personalized. Every single conversation, we can surface insights on this customer as if we've known them for the past 20 years, as if it's your next door neighbor, and create tailored financial products that suit their needs. I guarantee you Kimberly will be a customer for the rest of her life and her children's lives. And with that, I think anything else from Ralph and Kirsten? Anything else to show? Great. Well, thank you again for sitting through another demo. I think we've given a lot of food for thought. I want to say another massive thank you to everyone who's attended. I see some people have started to go do a school run or pick up kids, and yeah, please join us for the end. We're going to be doing some drinks and cocktails outside. Those of you who have a little bit of time to come and spend with us. And the final thing to say is just on those trials. Snowflake's been very generous and have offered these trials where any of you can actually go and play around, based on Standard Bank Group or IM. So please make sure that you do take advantage of that. Build your own demos. Do it one-handed if you want. Yeah, massive thank you to Ralph and Kirsten, and have a great afternoon. Thank you to everyone for coming,